Good morning. It is Thursday, July 23rd, and welcome back to the weekly Sociality Squared Director's Cut, where I go over commentary on social media marketing trends and stuff that we're doing here at Sociality Squared. I was gonna do a pinned comment really quick. So today we're going to be talking about the psychology of sharing on social media. So stay tuned to that. As always, thank you so much for joining today. I know there's a lot that you can be, or a lot of ways you can be spending your time, so I appreciate that you're spending it with me. We're still in the first wave of the coronavirus, and unfortunately, we've lost 140,000 people to this, and it's not looking good. So anyway, these are more than just people. These are loved ones that have been lost. So my heart is with your heart right now. And my heart is especially with the Black community as well. So here at Sociality Squared, we don't want business to return to normal. We want to create a better standard, one rooted in anti-racism and radical inclusion and equality. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Helen Todd. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sociality Squared. And if you're new to Sociality Squared, we're a social media agency who understands the value of people coming together around what they value and love, or the magic of people coming together around what they value and love. So clients partner with us to grow their businesses and know that we always remember behind every screen is a person. I've already put the description up in today's video so you can connect with Sociality Squared and myself. I'm Helen's Travels on Instagram and Twitter. And also, our monthly newsletter is coming out next week, so if you haven't signed up for that, please do, and that link is also in the description. So today I'll be covering a little bit some S2 news, our key topic on the psychology of sharing, and then we always end on some inspiration. And I'll try to keep this to 30 minutes today. So for S2 News, sign up for that newsletter. The link is in the description. And then also, I'm going to be doing a panel on social impact on Wednesday, August 5th, with 3 great panelists. Really excited about this. We're going to be talking about social impact programs that aren't just for the big brands like Ben and Jerry's in the world, and how small to medium-sized brands can align these programs with their core business practices and also with their missions. My panelists include 2 other practitioners in the space, and then Nasser, who is a Palestinian refugee turned NYC food entrepreneur and is just doing amazing work with the Migrant Kitchen here in New York City, helping feed food insecure communities. So he really brings it alive in his work. So we're excited to have that. So the link will be coming in the next couple of days, so I'll share that as soon as it's live. And then next week will be the last Facebook Live for the summer. I'm going to take August off from the broadcast, and then we'll return in September. So stay tuned for next week's topic. And then, of course, if you haven't liked this page already, please do, and you'll get notifications when we go live. Okay, so let's dive into the topic of the psychology of sharing, and then I'll go over a few links in the news and end on the inspiration. So the New York Times did a really thorough study on why people share back in 2011. And I still reference it, and I think it's really great content. And for whatever reason, they took it off online, but there's a link to the PDF and Dropbox version of it that I've saved for you all. The whole thing is worth reading, and I'm just going to go over some of the key highlights and the implications. But I think one of the interesting things, I mean, we're all spending so much time online. It might be connecting with family, it might be staying up on the news, it might be getting educated on anti-racism or the coronavirus latest stats, or it might just be looking for, kittens and puppy videos and funny memes to kind of find some levity in all of this. So the content that we consume, you know, is important, but also what we choose to share has different implications. And this is what that study really dove into. And let's see, where did it go? The 5 key reasons why people share, which I think is interesting. So this is both just from a human level, and then we'll put on the marketer's hat and look at it that way. So the 5 reasons why people share: to bring valuable, enlightening, and entertaining content into the lives of people that they care about. This is, sharing funny posts, or maybe tips on wearing a mask helps prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Also, to define themselves. This is very much what, our online personas are very much extensions of our identities and how we see ourselves, and what we share also reflects that. To grow and nourish their relationships. I think a great example of this is all these throwback time capsules of this time last year. When we were actually hanging out with people in real life, went to this wedding or did this activity. And I always love those because it's comment on those, and it's like a nice memory to bring that group of people back together. But however it is, to grow and nourish your relationships. And then also for self-fulfillment, in sharing valuable information to people, however valuable it's defined, whether it is, entertaining, informational, or something else, that people actually get self-fulfillment out of sharing that type of information with other people. And then the 5th reason is to get the word out about causes people believe in. So whether it's causes or brands that people support and their mission, or whatever it is, sustainability, anti-racism, whatever it is, people will share because they care about the cause, and that's a way that they can, a very light touch way to share. And, all of these are, there's overlap, and different people can share them for different reasons. But one thing that the study points out is that all 5 motivations for sharing come down to relationships consumers have with themselves and with their community, or relationships with other people. So they also identified like 6 personality types of people who share, which are worth mentioning. There's the, sorry, my voice is scratchy, altruists, who are just motivated to bring valuable content to people that they care about. There's the careerists. These are more focused on building a network, using online content to further their careers. The hipsters, these are more likely to start conversation, debate, or controversy. And they're also strongly motivated to cultivate an online identity. So I always think of influencers as kind of hipsters of, that very curated look. The boomerangs are similar to hipsters, but they just like to stir the pot, and they're motivated by feedback, whether positive or negative. And I think we all know some boomerangs in our lives. And then the connectors are sharing for mutual experiences. And actually, one thing that was interesting on this is connectors share things that will bring them together in person, from like coupons for shopping or restaurants, and sharing with like-minded people. And I think Facebook groups are a really good example of just kind of the concept of people coming around a specific interest and sharing content for those groups. I'm a part of an indoor plants group, and it's amazing what's shared in that group in terms of people asking questions, and that gives up people an opportunity to share their feedback. It's a very like non-judgmental group when it comes to indoor plants. That's why I'm in it. But also like sharing their love of plants, their tips about plants. So to me, that just like really highlights people coming together around interests to form community. And there's so many amazing Facebook groups out there that also exemplify this. The selectives are interesting. They are not the waterfall sharers. They're very particular about what they share, and they only will share it if they think it's meaningful to the person that they're sharing with, and also that they will think that the person hasn't shared that yet. So these people spend more time in selecting what they're going to share, and everyone, you and I, also, want recognition and feedback. I think the boomerangs aren't as concerned with necessarily just positive feedback. So this is interesting. I did a talk or a panel, online panel last year with Sprout Social, where we were talking about social listening and how these apply to social media marketing. So I wanted to, discuss that too. So how in the report as well, the New York Times had recommendations of what to do for marketers, because I think this was a study that they put together for advertisers. So as we're putting together content strategies, it's important to understand who your audience is and how they act with you, or how they interact with the content that you're putting out there. And the ways that you can, kind of understand how they're interacting with behavior is, one, to test different content and see, what content they're engaging with in sharing. Across the board, with our different clients, we had a health client where we did health tips that performed really well. With other clients, it's more entertaining content. For a food client, we've done recipes that worked really well, and even like giveaways. I know I've mentioned this before. Some of these, not the most creative tactics in the world, but they work. And if for the Leica Society, we just gave away a Leica M10 camera, which is or their new version, which is a very expensive and fabulous camera. And that just essentially, people who want that camera, it's such an easy way to say, hey, enter this. I think you would like this. So understanding who your audience is and how they're engaging with your content, and then as you're optimizing it to create more content that they'll engage with and share. Because sharing is one of those, in last week's algorithm, live broadcast, we were talking about algorithms and signals. Sharing is a really strong signal for the algorithm that people are taking an action to reshare that content to their feeds. So the more that we can hone in on that shareable content for our brands, the better. And I know I speak a lot in the Facebook umbrella, but this also applies to Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, and all the platforms. So understanding, as you're creating content, thinking about, is it shareable and what would make it shareable? Is it informational? Is it funny? Is it a value add? What would make people engage with it and also share it? Trust is essential. If people are going to be trusting or sharing content, are they trusting the source? One example on a marketing front is I see these all the time of like, buy these designer sunglasses at a cheap discount. They look so fake and crap and like scammy or spammy to me that it's like, this looks like, I don't trust this at all, so I'm not going to do it. And specifically, I know I've talked about this before too, when it comes to sharing, right, in this moment in time, there's so much misinformation related to the election, voter suppression, or that's the misinformation coming through the coronavirus and anti-racism, and so you have to be extremely careful in understanding your source, checking the source, and if there's studies referenced that they've been peer reviewed. But if consumers are going to share content, they've got to trust the source coming in from brands. And then keep it simple. The message has to be straightforward for, at least in this, how this study does it. Appeal to consumers' sense of humor. Humor can be a hard note because it can range from, slapstick silly to ironic, but humor is a great way to have thumb-stopping content and also shareable content. You just have to make sure that it's aligned with your brand and how humor is defined for your brand, because it means a lot of different things and can sometimes be a hard note to hit. And also embrace a sense of urgency. Sometimes it's just great to ask people, like, hey, share this, retweet this, as a call to action. But also, as the paper points out, people will save a bunch of links. I know I'm guilty of this, but then never go back and read them or share them. So you really have, like, in the moment, the opportunity to get people to share. I know there's some things that I save and then I think about and, write something more thoughtful and then share too. But in general, you want people to you want to make it as easy as possible for someone to share in that moment. And then just getting content to share is just the beginning. You have to then listen, engage with these people, optimize content, and it's just, one piece of the puzzle in the social media marketing cycle. And another thing that the article points out is that email is still a key place where people share valuable content they find. And I also want to point out, one thing that we see in reports are what we publicly see and how people are sharing and engaging on the page. What we don't see is what's happening on dark social, of links that are grabbed and shared in DMs or that can't be tracked. So I guess we can see the number of times something's shared, but at a certain point we can't see how it was shared and we lose some information, which is okay. I mean, ideally we would, it's not ideal from, the marketer standpoint, but having people share in DMs is great. And the paper didn't go into this, but I would certainly be, oh geez, huh, that was interesting. I got a notice that this was paused for a reason. So anyway, I forget, hopefully it wasn't paused for too long. But I was talking about dark social and I got paused on Facebook. The thing that I was saying that the paper doesn't go into is, the differences of sharing privately versus publicly. And I do think there is a difference in terms of sharing publicly, even if it's in a close, like only to your friends, still has much of your public persona and how you want to be perceived, in addition to, sharing privately, diving into connections, and that's still part of an extension of who you are and how you want to be perceived. So from a marketing standpoint, how can this information help you grow? Like, why do people share? What persona do they have? Where are they physically located? What platforms are they on? When are they on them? What are they saying on them? How are they saying it? This is important too with the sharing. Are they retweeting content? Are they using emojis or GIFs? And this is where making content that kind of all lives in an image that can easily be reshared is really great in terms of shareable content. Are they writing original content or just responding to content? Content that we're putting out as marketers can be provocative and word that's just commenting. a question, like a post, maybe an image that has a question, elicits more of a comment feed versus a tip that's more value add in a broader sense, that's more shareable. And then just understanding what's meaningful to them. And a few ways that you could figure out, how people are look at your own analytics, what's engaging, do competitor research, see what's being engaged with and shared on your competitors, and then also at an industry level. Okay, so this is the thing that I want to tell you about the psychology of sharing. So in short, people share for different reasons online. It's about relationships, the relationship with themselves and how they want to be perceived and where they find fulfillment, and then also building connections with other people. So as you're creating content, think about all of these aspects to create that shareable content. And the link to the New York Times study is in the video. Okay, so quick, in the last 10 minutes, I want to go over a few links and then the inspiration. So Casey Newton, who does a daily evening newsletter, which I highly recommend, had a great post on the FTC and Facebook and TikTok and the Splinter Net a few days ago. And Facebook forever being in the news for different reasons. I think this upcoming Monday is going to be, the FTC's it's about the FTC's antitrust case. And he does a really good job kind of explaining the background and the different arguments between both sides and the complications with it. And also something that's still up for debate, which is whether they're going to try to dispose of Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, which we'll see what happens on that front. But in short, like Facebook is saying, it's a free platform, so that they, they can't really argue that the anti-competitiveness is coming from price, so that they have to look at other things. But one of Facebook's key arguments is because of our scale, we can invest so much in moderators and AI to help, moderate hate speech and whatnot. And if you were to make us smaller, we wouldn't have the resources to do that. And then also, breaking us up, this was something that he said in his Georgetown talk, either earlier this year or last year. Do you want an American valued internet or a Chinese valued internet? If you break us up, there'll be vacuums to fill that will come in. And then on the flip side, on the, they're reducing competition. It's like, well, you acquired Instagram, you acquired WhatsApp, TikTok is vulnerable now, you've released Reels, which is actually banned in India, and they're releasing it there. So Facebook has quite a history of cloning and acquiring other platforms to reduce its competition. So it's interesting. So we'll pay attention to this one, and kind of talks about TikTok too, where it's an interesting case related to this in that, Facebook is this big beast that no one could, steal away, time. Then comes TikTok, and they spend a lot of money, which actually I didn't know this until I read the article. TikTok spent $1 billion on advertising to really capture users, which is a ton. But the children now spend an average of 80 minutes a day on TikTok. That's a lot of time spent per day on TikTok. And in terms of time spent, that is a big competition for Facebook. But it is worrisome that, India banned TikTok, so we're not too far away of having countries ban platforms for political reasons. We're seeing this in the US. We might ban TikTok due to you know, they're not saying it's due to Chinese relations, but it's not too far from that either. And Casey Newton also mentioned like the splinter net, where we have, for the most part, aside from China, a global internet, and if we start splintering it like this, it really might be a country-based or regional-based internet too. So I haven't read his article on that in depth, but I will, and recommend it too, just because it's the ideas of the internet, of being everyone connected together beyond borders, is one of the beautiful things, or the beautiful ideals about the internet. And then if we splinter it off, then it becomes closed and whatnot. And also what's interesting about the dark web, that kind of is some of the original ideas of the internet kind of can exist or do exist somewhat in the dark web too. Okay, and then another article I wanted to mention, which is from Eric Solomon, who's a dear friend, and he wrote an article that showed up on Entrepreneur about titled "Stop Talking About Empathy and Start Acting on It." It's a really good read. We've discussed empathy a lot here on this broadcast, and we think about it a lot in Sociality Squared for the work that we do. And one of the main things in Eric's article is that so many companies say that empathy is important, but what does it mean? It's kind of this, it means different things to different people, and people, companies will say it as a core value, but don't attach any actions to it or define it and put it into action. So it's a really thought-provoking piece, and definitely one that as the conversation evolves about empathy, it's like, well, what are we doing to put it in action? And he really addresses this in the article. So highly recommend it, and also, to go beyond just saying it and acting on it, and actually act on it. And then for the inspiration, I have two inspirations to leave you with in the last few minutes. Liza Donnelly, who is a cartoonist, a comic artist. I met her. It was actually funny how I met her. I went to the Inspiration Festival in Ireland a few years ago, and she was one of the speakers. And then at the airport, she does these live drawings where she does them actually every day at 5 p.m. on her Instagram account, where she just has her iPad and draws in real time. And I saw her at the airport because we were on the same flight from Dublin back to New York, and she was live drawing whoever was behind the desk or the counter at the flight. And so I took a photo of her drawing the person, and then tweeted it, and then we connected, and I've stayed connected since. But she's really talented, and the Norman Rockwell Museum is doing an exhibit with her, and she did a live video of her walking through, kind of showing the history of her work, some of the thought process behind it. And it was just really interesting, and a glimpse into this type of cartoonist is accurate, this type of industry, which it's a very small and connected industry, and just a glimpse at the progression of her work, and some of her top ones, like this one's really funny, and just how she also explained how her form is just not like a visual representation of a joke. It's much more. It's like, and I'm not going to do it justice, but it's not just a joke. It makes people think, and you're using the words and images in a different way. And like one of her popular ones is she's got two people outside of an apartment, and a woman says, "I'd invite you in, but my life's a mess." So it kind of finds these. She does a good job of like kind of understanding the zeitgeist, or what's the vibe of what's happening, and then incorporating it, that into her work, and also, you know, balancing you know, heavy content with some comic relief. And the title, I think the curator from the museum came up with it, but was really good. So you can click through the link that I shared and just get a sense of her work, and then also, you know, walk with her as she tours some of her work and gives background on her as a feminist and how that kind of came out in her voice in the work too. So I'm a big fan, and it was really great to kind of see more of her you know, history and body of work. And the other recommendation that I have is the Wachowskis' Sense8, which is 2 seasons on Netflix. Since I last spoke here, I may have binged all 2 seasons. And I've been somewhat obsessed with the Wachowskis recently, and going through all of their work. But it is, Sense8 is so interesting. We talk about like diversity and inclusion. If you want to know what this looks like, this series is so great. It's got, it's an international film. You have an actor in Nairobi, India, South Korea, a white cop in Chicago, a German, and I'm forgetting one, or forgetting a few, but it's totally really an international cast, and they've spent a ton of money flying to all the locations. But even diverse in the group, you have the Mexican closeted gay actor, you have a trans woman as part of as a main character, and not only showing these people as victims, but they're the main characters, and you see them having joy and in loving relationships. So that's just really beautiful to see. And then the concept of the show came from, which I was, you know, watching some interviews, is that they, I guess Lana Wachowski was having a discussion with someone, and she was interested in the idea of the presence of streaming videos with you, or the experience of if someone was streaming a video with you everywhere. And then that kind of morphed into this, having that person there in a presence, and that kind of came to life in this telepathic sense. So the Sense8, the concept is, it's kind of this evolutionary thing where 8 people in clusters can experience each other's feelings, but then also kind of FaceTime just through your minds and of sorts with each other too. Which is also really interesting because you talk about empathy and understanding people's experiences. You have like the Mexican gay actor experiencing the Korean woman on her period, and it is so hilarious. So anyway, it's a great film, and then it's on top of all of that, it's got the you know, super action-packed and storyline of, you know, them discovering, you know, that they have this, and some people are out to get them and all of that. And the Wachowskis, since I didn't mention this from the outset, they are the creators behind The Matrix, and really just groundbreaking work. And I think right now, you know, Sense8, oh, and what's interesting about the Wachowskis too, which I think I've said before, they were, they're trans women, and have just really done groundbreaking work, from The Matrix, Speed Racer, which I also really recommend, and Cloud Atlas. But Sense8, we could say, is really progressive right now in depicting these characters, how they are. But, you know, hopefully will look back and just say that, you know, this was progressive for this time period and just a glimpse of what inclusion can be. So I really recommend it. It's only 2 seasons. And another cool thing about this show is I feel like I'm late to the game. I wish I was a fan when it was, you know, being released. That Netflix actually ended the 2nd season early because it didn't have as wide of an audience to justify the like $9 million per episode, and the fans just went crazy and campaigned for Netflix to bring it back. So they did a 2-hour special ending because of the fans, which is also like just a really great story about the show too. So I'm totally converted. Everyone who I've talked to this week, I've told them about Sense8, so I'm telling you guys too. I really enjoyed it, and it's just a beautiful show and an action-packed show and a great, you know, a great project that the Wachowskis have shared with us. So, okay. So thank you for joining. We're over again a little bit, but again, like this page, if you haven't already, sign up for our monthly newsletter because that is coming out next week. And then next week is also the last Facebook Live for the summer, and then I'll be back in September. So I hope you join next week as well. So thank you, stay safe, stay vigilant, and we'll see you next week.